Hi, my name is Pablo Requena, and in this video I'm going to talk about rosette making. Now, I did a video some months ago about how to make a rope detail for a rosette, and in that video I did explain the whole process about how to be able to make that particular design. And in this video we're gonna look at a different type of design. So some of the information in this video is going to overlap and it will be a bit similar to what's in the other video, but I don't mind that because I've got lots of questions from people who don't see the process very well. Now, don't think, oh, I'm being silly, I don't get this. No, it's just quite normal because, you know, with all the students that I've had over the years, I can see that some people, myself included, I would like to think, we have a very good three-dimensional mind where we can see things in our head in 3 dimensions quite easily. But it's not always the same for everybody. So what I usually tell my students is, okay, hold on, don't worry. At the moment it might look a little bit abstract, but as we follow the process, you'll see how things fall into place and then everything will make sense. So if that is the case for you, then that's what I would say to you. Watch the whole video. And if you have any questions from the previous video, maybe hopefully I will be resolving them in this one. If not, drop me a question in the section below and I'll try to answer the best possible. But it's basically a concept that it's very easy to see, but maybe not always from the very first moment. So I'm going to explain the process about how to do this rosette. Well, not the whole rosette. It's just going to be the center section, which is the one with the tile design. And then we will see how things progress. At this stage, I'd also like to mention, I've already said I've got lots of students, and that's because I organize courses here in Spain where people come along for 1 month and you learn how to build your own guitar from scratch, including the rosette. And this is a rosette, the one that we're going to see in this video, is a rosette that we've done many times with students, and I've done it on my guitars as well. It's a beautiful design. It's by no means my own idea. It's based on other designs that I've seen online, and I don't have a problem with that because really the chances of being able to create something completely original is more and more difficult all the time. So don't be put off by copying or being inspired from something that's been done before, because the chances is that everything is already been done. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to show you what we're going to be doing. So you can see we got this rosette already set in the soundboard, and what we're going to be looking at is at the center section of the rosette, which is basically this little wave with a little red dot in the middle. Now the other elements of the rosette, these lines and this kind of angle diamond shape, you can change that according to your taste. So we're not going to look into this at the moment, we're just going to look at the center section, which is really the heart of the rosette, and that's what usually it changes from one rosette to another. So to be able to do this, we're going to have to break it down into pixels to be able to see what we're actually doing. So that is what I have done in this square page. So I have actually split it in two because it's a little bit easier to see. So we're going to look at this section first and then this other section, which the two of them will come together to be able to produce the center motif. So breaking it down, you can see that you have a series of pixels in black and white, just one red in there, to give this pattern. And then you've got this other one to produce the second half of the pattern. So I'm going to show you over here. This one is kind of nearly ready. Let me get everything to line up so that we can see really well what we're talking about. And here you have the whole thing put together. This is not being glued, you can see it's not stuck together, but at the moment this is all we need. So you can see here When everything is glued together, then we can just cut in slices. But I find that it's a little bit easier if we split it. So if we make it into 2 different tiles, it's going to be a little bit easier to work with. And the reason for that is because, let me put this together again so that they don't get confused. The reason for that is that we are looking at rectangular pieces. And the rectangular pieces, when you put one next to the other one, they will want to go in a straight line. But we need to go around the circle of the rosette. So what will happen is that if this was just one long rectangle, you'll find that the edges will not meet so well. But if we split it in 2, it means that the pieces have a chance to turn very slightly, and it will go around the circle a lot more easily. The trade price for that is that sometimes these pieces don't line up 100%. Like, for example, this one with the pencil I mentioned and pointing out here, you can see that this don't line up 100% the same here. But the overall result is really good and it works really well. So I think it's only a little price to pay for the sake of being able to do this right. Otherwise, what will happen is that those joints would be good, but then the joint in between tile and tile will be much more obvious. There's a solution for that, but we're not going to talk about that in this video because it's really not relevant for this. It's for a different type of tile, which is much bigger, and there's no other option than to do something about it. But we're not going to look at that in this video. So now that we have the diagram that we need to follow, we need to think about, okay, how are we going to put this together? And you can see that this is all made with veneers. So what I've done is to break this down in columns, and I've got this as column number 1, then number 2, 3 and 4. I have 4 different columns here. None of them repeat. They're all completely different to each other. And then in this other section, we have column number 5, column number 6, number 7. Then this column here is also number 6 because even though basically have the same amount of squares in the same arrangement, it's just one flipped from the other. So you can see in here we have 2 whites, 2 blacks, and in this one you have them up here, 2 blacks and 2 whites, sorry, 2 whites and 2 blacks, and then you have 4 whites and you have 4 whites. So effectively this column is the same as this one but upside down. Then we have column number 7, and it's the same with number 5. You can see that this one, it's repeated again over here. The same situation, it's the same arrangement, it's just one, it's in one direction and the other one is in the other direction. And then you got column number 8. So what this means is that we have 8 different columns. We are not going to take into account the one that are repeated, and you will see later why that is the case. So we just want to work out how many squares we have of different colors. So we're going to make a diagram here with a count of how many squares we have of each color. So for column number 1, you have 6 white pixels and 2 black pixels. Then for column number 2, you have 4 whites, 3 blacks and 1 red, and so on. You just count them up, write them down, and just get a total. And the total gives you 45 white pixels, 18 black pixels and 1 red pixel. So what this means is that each one of these pixels represent one piece of veneer, and we're going to work on each one of these columns individually. So this is what we have here. We have a series of veneers in black and white, and all of these pieces are 0.5 of a millimeter because each one of these squares represents 0.5 of a millimeter square. So we're going to work with 0.5 veneers, and these veneers are very easy to find. You will find them in most timber suppliers for guitar makers. In Spain we have 2 main ones, which is Madinter and maderas barber, but whether you are in the UK or in the US or wherever you are in the world, the chances are that you have a timber supplier in your country. So go in the website and look for the veneers that they supply and work with the colors that they have on offer. Usually they have black and white, but they also have red, green, blue, maybe yellow, and maybe a few other colors. The black and white is the most standard. So usually when you buy them, they are pretty much like this one. Sometimes they vary in width, but the length is always more or less the same. This one is 800 millimeters long, and with an 800 millimeter long piece, what I do is that I cut it in 4, so in half I get 400, and then I cut it in half again, and I get 4 pieces of 200 millimeters long, which is what these pieces are. This is 200 millimeters long, and 25 millimeters wide. The width here is not so important. You want it at least 25 millimeters because you want to have a little bit of material to work with and you want to be able to work comfortably. If you make this too thin, you're going to make your life difficult. So I would say make it at least 25 millimeters wide, but if it's a little bit wider because you want to make more of it, then that's also fine. But this is a good dimension to work with. So basically this is 200 millimeters long by 25 millimeters wide and 0.5 millimeter thick. So what I've done is to cut 45 pieces wide like this one, which, you know, I've got all of this already arranged, but you can see there are loads of these pieces. And then I've also cut 18 in black, you can see them here, and 1 red, which is somewhere there. So once you cut them up, what you do is that you arrange them following the pattern of the column that we're working with. And so in this one, let me open this up like this. If I can manage like that, you can see that we have one white, which is this one, one black, that one, then you have 2 whites, these 2, 1 black, and then you have 3 whites, which are these ones. So this stack will be stack number 1. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put a number 1 in that stack so that I can recognize it. And I'm going to do the same with stack number 2. This one has the red dot in the middle. You can see I got the number 2 already here. So this should already be in the right order. I just want to show you so that you can see how this works. So again, we have white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black. Then we have the red dot, red, and then you have black, white, white, black, white, white. And the same with all the other ones. This is really very simple. So what you want to do is to be very methodical and make sure that you have all the veneers in the right order, in the right sequence, and you keep them in order so that you know what you're doing. So I've got all of them ready here, but notice how from I only have 1 stack for column number 6, and I also have 1 stack for column number 5. Okay, so now that we've got that, what we have to do is to glue these stacks together. So what's important is that we want to keep them all as similar as possible in thickness. So instead of just gluing, putting glue in between and just clamp them together and leave it like that, we are going to use a clamping block. So basically this. So what we've done here is that I have a look at here, and you can see that this is 4 millimeters in thickness, and they're all going to be pretty much the same because we have the same amount of veneers here. Sometimes the thickness of veneers can vary very slightly, but we're going to assume that they're all the same. So if this one is 4 millimeters, they're all going to be 4 millimeters thick. So what we're going to do is to make a block like this. And in here you can see that I have these two strips. So this block is also 200 millimeters long, but the section in the middle here, it's not the same as this. It's a little bit wider. So in here I have 40 millimeters. And the reason for that is because when I bring all these veneers with the glue into here, I want to make sure that there's a little bit of air in both sides so that the glue can start drying up. If this is like that into the edge and we made this block just big enough to house this, you'll see how the glue doesn't dry very well and you're just going to have all sorts of problems. So it's better to make a block that is a little bit bigger than we need to make sure that these strips, these veneers will be located here with a gap in between the veneer and the blocks. Now what we've done here is that this block, I've put it through my sanding machine and I made a strip 4 millimeters thick. So this strip is exactly the same thickness as the veneers. And I stuck it together to do this MDF block, which is the same length as the veneers. And then what I've done is to put a little bit of clear transparent tape into the block so that with the excess glue from the veneers, when the glue squeezes out, it's not going to get stuck into anywhere else and I'm not going to have problems. So this will come out very easily. And then this is the lid and it's the same. You got a little bit of transparent clear tape here to make sure that this is not going to get stuck. And this is actually our gluing block. And what this means is that as we glue all these veneers together and we bring it into here, then we can put a few clamps and you just need to check that this is all touching together, and you put a few clamps here and then you know that the compression from the clamps is not going to go farther than the 4 millimeters here, because what will happen is that if we didn't have two stops, sometimes it's possible to compress more in one area than in another area, and then the thickness is not going to be very even. And that's important because later on, if these pieces are not as similar as they could be, then these dots later on will not line up as well as they could. So this is the idea, that you want to get everything the same thickness if possible. So I'm not going to glue this together. You can see this is quite an easy process. The only thing that you need to be really careful when you glue this is that you glue everything in the right sequence. So usually what I do is that I put them in front of me like this, and then I put a number in them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. That way I make sure that, you know, I'm not going to get confused as I'm gluing this, and then I put this in my vise and I start gluing all of this. So I just put my glue here, bring it there, the same bit of glue, and then into here, and then I try to line them up as much as I can, but you need to bear in mind that you don't have all the time in the world here. The glue is going to start setting, and by the time you put the glue in the last one, the glue in the first one is not going to be as fresh as we want it. So we need to work fairly quickly to make sure that when we compress everything, the glue is still fresh enough to penetrate well into the other veneers so that everything is glued properly. So this is as much as I'm going to explain about gluing this. This is also explained in the other video, so I'm sure this is simple enough to get the concept. So what we're going to do is that now that we have all the stacks glued together, I'm going to bring these ones into here. These are exactly the same, but they're already been glued together and they all stack as one piece. Now what will happen is that when you glue this into the gluing block, inevitably these veneers are not going to line up very well. So I'm just going to make this go like it could be. Like for example, this might end up coming out like this, and you can see the veneers might line up, but they might not line up very well. I've exaggerated here, hopefully it will not be as bad as this. But what will happen is that then you need to plane both edges until you get all the veneers flush to each other. That's why you want to have a block like this that is kind of reasonably wide, because if this is too narrow to start with, then you're going to have difficulties to do this. You want to glue everything as neatly as possible, but inevitably there's going to be some veneers that are going to move, so you always want to have a bit of material to be able to plane. So that's what we've done here. What I've done is to get my shooting board, a block plane, and plane both sides until everything is nice and flush. So you do that with all 8 of them. You can see I've got them all ready. And then what we do is that we need to cut one strip from this edge, and this is block number 1, so this will create the strip to make the first column here, which is the one with the 2 blacks there, which is there here. So what we're going to do is to set up the bandsaw so that you can cut a very thin strip from this edge, and the strip needs to be just barely thicker than 0.5 of a millimeter. If you make it thicker, it will be easier to cut, but then you're going to have a lot of work to bring the strip down to 0.5 millimeter, which is really what you want to do. So I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to break down this block, which is already kind of presented, and I didn't want to glue it because I wanted you to be able to see what's in here. So this is the strip that goes here, number 1. We got strip number 2 on that one, strip number 3, then strip number 4, which goes on that one, then strip number 5, then strip number 6, number 7, which is this one. Then we have again strip number 6, so this one goes there, strip number 5, and then number 8. So I've got the strips back to the blocks where they came from, and here you can see that we have one strip from each block, but from block number 5 and from block number 6 we've cut 2 strips. What we've done is to cut one strip from one edge and then one strip from the other edge. That way, all the strips, we do it that way. Doing it that way means that we have one clean side in the strip and then only one rough side from the bandsaw in the strips that we're using. But you can see here how we don't need to make 2 blocks like this for number 5, because from the same block we can cut 2 strips, which is what we need to be able to do the repeated column in this block. So what you want to do is to set up your bandsaw to be able to cut a strip like this, which is only just a little bit thicker than 0.5 millimeter. So once you cut it, then you're going to get yourself a sanding block. There's different ways of doing this. You can use a sanding block, you can use a scraper with 2 spaces as well to raise the scraper so that it's just giving you the right thickness. In this case, because this I was able to cut it at about 0.6 of a millimeter, there was very little to clean up. What I did was to get a sanding block, and then I've got 2 pieces of veneers here, 0.5 of a millimeter. So you can see here I've got a black piece of 0.5 of a veneer, and I've put it one in one end and one in the other end. So what that means is that I can use this to clean the rough side, and this is only going to clean as far as the height of these 2 spaces. So I know when this doesn't cut anymore, I'm going to have a veneer or a strip that is 0.5 millimeter thick. And in fact, when you check with your caliper, you can see that this is what we have, 0.5 all the way along. So when you look at this from this end, then is when you can see that you have, let's put it this way. This is when you can see that you have one white, black, white, white, black, white, white, white. You have the same amount and the same arrangement as the column that you have here, and the same for all the other ones. So this is how you recreate these columns with these pieces. Now, once you have cut all the strips that you need, obviously here you can see that in this section you only need one strip from each one of these blocks, and in this one you need one from each, except from number 5 and number 6, which you need 2. Well, then you cut 2 of them, you clean them all up, and then what you do is that you bring them together. And so in this case you have the one white dot on the top, so we put it like this. Then strip number 2. Well, before doing this, actually with the chisel I did cut off a little bit at the end, because this is how they come out. But if you leave it like this, then it's not so easy to see the pattern later on. So I did cut off a little bit, as little as possible, but enough to be able to cut through all of them in all the strips. You can see the same here. That end is as it came out, but that one is being cut. So we're gonna put everything together. So this one goes this way, this one like this, then strip number 3, which goes this way up, and then strip number 4, which goes this way up. And now you can see here you have the right pattern to be able to get this block. So we're going to put this to one side. I'm going to use one of these clips actually, because I don't need it there now, but I'm going to put this in here because I don't want this to kind of separate. So I'm going to put that there, and then we're going to have a look at block number 2. So we start with vanilla number 5, or with strip, I should say, number 5. I'm going to put the single dot at the bottom, then number 6, and then you have 2 dots at the bottom. So I'm going to put this in this way, and then you got number 7. This one, it doesn't matter which way around we put it, because we have 3, 2 and 3, so it doesn't matter if it goes this way or that way, you still could do the same job. Then we go back to number 6, which is this one, and this time we have the 2 at the top, so it's going to go in this way. Then we've got again number 5, which it goes with a single white dot on the top, so it's going to go like this. And then you have number 8, which also goes with a single dot to the top, so it's going to go this way. So now we also have the second rod to work with. Right, so now that we have these 2, we have to glue them together, and we have to glue them together in such a way that all the veneers are going to line up. It wouldn't be any good to glue this together and then find that actually this is moving, and then what will happen is that when we cut little blocks from here, they're not going to line up and the pattern is going to disappear. So it's also important that we have all of this lining up together. But because all these stacks were the same thickness, 4 millimeters, then we know that all of these are also going to be 4 millimeters here. So they're all 4 millimeter width and wide. So what we're going to do is to look at how to glue this together accurately so that everything lines up well. So I'm going to make a little bit of room here. We don't need these blocks now. And if you excuse me for a second. get right, so I've got this gluing block here. This is a nylon gluing block, and this was made for me by an engineer in the UK. This is very easy to do it if you want to do it yourself, and basically all it is, you can do this with wood if you don't have access to this type of material, which usually engineering companies, they have it because they use it all the time. But if you want to do this yourself rather than commission this to somebody, then just do it in wood, do it nicely well, and then put transparent tape all in the gluing surfaces or in the areas where the glue could get to, and then it will do the same job. So basically, you can see we have three pieces here. You have the base. To give you some dimensions, this is 100 millimeters wide and 11 millimeters thick, and the length is also 200 millimeters. Well, actually this one is a bit longer, 210, but if you did it 200 millimeters long, it will work as well, because your veneers are 200 millimeters long. So what you have is one section that is permanently attached to the base, and then you have another section which you can move around. And what we will do is that we are gonna glue all these pieces and put it in this block. But I'm going to show you how I do this, because it's very important that we glue all these pieces carefully, because we don't want to find that we are gluing them together and we make a mistake and we glue one the other way around, because then the pattern will be messed up and it won't work. So in this case, it's very important that not only they go in the right sequence or in the right order, so I'm going to put them in the right order here on the bench, but they also need to go in facing the right way. So what I do is to make sure that to get it right, again, I put down a number, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that way not only I know the order in which they go in, but I also know that as I put them here in the block, I always have to see the number. If I glue this down by mistake and I don't see the number, then I know there's something wrong here and this will not work. So that is a good way of putting a marker here so that you can see that everything is gonna be in the right direction and in the right way. So what we're gonna do is, normally I put the first one in, sorry, a bit of dust in my throat or something. Anyway, so I put in the first one without anything and I bring it in place, then I get the second one and know where the number is, but in the other side I put a very thin bit of glue, tight bond, and I spread it so that I get glue everywhere, and then I bring it together with the other one, try to line up everything as possible, and then you bring it into the block and you tack them together to line them up with this block. Then you do the same here, put the glue underneath, and the same, you bring it into here. You can open this up if you want. I'm not going to do this with glue because it's going to be a little messy and it'll be easier to see this without the glue. You can do it in your own workshop with the glue. And then the same with the other one. We got this one here, put the glue in that side, and in all of them we've been seeing the numbers to the top, so that way we know that they all are in the right order. So now what's left to do is to bring this in without pushing too much. You just want to make sure that they all line up, and then with the Allen key you just do this up. Doesn't need to be too tight, because whether this block is made of wood or nylon, the thread is not going to be very strong, so you don't need to make this bolts too tight. And then you're gonna get one of these stacks, which is also the same thickness as all of these ones, and you're gonna plane one edge, you're gonna put a little bit of clear tape on the edge, and then you're gonna use this as a compressing block, and then just put one clamp in each end, and that way this is gonna be pushing everything down, clamping everything down. So that way you know that all these pieces are properly glued together, and they're all gonna come together in one piece, and everything is gonna line up as it should. So once that's done, then you're gonna get this out, and you're gonna do the same thing with the other block. So I'm going to put this together, and then you need to do the same thing with this block, and it's exactly the same thing. They need to go in the right sequence, but also the right face up, because the same here, if one of them is gone the other way around, it's not going to work and the pattern will not show up. So the same thing I'm not going to show you because it's exactly the same process and it's exactly the same thing. So then you get all of this out, and I've got these two little containers here, and I've got the two offcuts from having done the rosette that I've showed you earlier on. But you can see the pattern shows up really well over here. So I'm going to have a look. This one would go this way, in which you have the three blacks on the top, the three blacks on the top, and then the two blacks on the side and the single black on the side. So it goes this way. And then this other one you can identify, because in this end you have two blacks, but in that side you only have one black. So if you have a look at this, you can see that you have one black line here and you have two blacks line here. So it's the two black lines that need to go together with, but it goes this way. So you got two black lines, one black line. So this comes together like so. Okay? So what we're going to do is to cut loads of little blocks from each one of them. You can see this one originally was the same length as this, but now this is all I've got left, and the same with the other one. So I'm going to show you the cutting block that I use, which is a homemade device. It's just basically a couple of pieces of plywood with, I've done a few cuts already here, but basically I'm using this one at the moment. And what I've done is to mark one line, which is about 2.5 millimeters away from the cutting slot. So I'm going to bring this over here, and with the Japanese saw, so I got a few of these ones, so I'm going to cut just a couple of this. So I'm going to bring this to the line, and I'm going to let the saw do the work here. I don't want to put too much pressure on the saw because it's not needed, and if I am a little aggressive here, then I'm going to damage the tiles that I'm making. But basically that's what you have. It's all very small, so all of this is fiddly, but you just need to be careful in the way that you work. And what you have, it's one tile of the right dimension, and to be able to do the rosette you want this to be about 2.5 millimeters. This one is 2 millimeters, so we want them to be just a little bit thicker. So what we're going to do is that when I cut the next ones, instead of coming just to the pencil line that I've got there, I'm just going to go on the pencil line. That way I know that they're going to be a little bit thicker. In other ones I have a stop as well, but I was, yeah, those stops are for other things. So I'm just going to do it freehand, and if they are not all exactly the same thickness, it's not really too much of a problem. So basically you've got this other one, and this one now should be a little bit thicker. And yeah, it's just over 2 millimeters. But anyway, you work it out and you cut it so that it's just a little bit thicker. And you don't want them to be less than 2 millimeters because the depth of the slot in the soundboard, so the depth of the slot that we're going to cut here to embed everything in is 2 millimeters. You don't want the tiles to be less than the depth of here. So that's why you want them to be at least 2 millimeters, but 2.5 could be good. You don't want them too high because then you're going to have a lot of work and you're going to have less tiles coming out of it. So now that you can see how they're all being cut, you can see that they all will come together really well. So I'm going to bring them together again here. So this one will go like that, and then this one would go like this. And so on. Then we have another one to put here, and then when you assemble this in the rosette, which is not what we're going to be doing today, we have shown this in other videos. In this video I just wanted to explain how to do this design, but you can see that all of this will line up very nicely and will do a very nice job. At the moment we got these fluffs in these blocks, which it would be a good idea to remove them so that everything comes together a bit better, but you get the idea. It doesn't look as neat in here, but you can see when it comes together in the rosette, you've seen it that it works really well. And all of this, you can see that they will line up very reasonably. And it's basically all of these blocks are put in the same orientation and the same with the other one, and as you put one next to the other one you get that pattern, which when you look at it at a reasonable distance, it makes this beautiful wave going all the way around. So I think this is pretty much all you need to know to be able to do this design for this rosette. This is a very popular rosette that many people want to do. I find many of my students, they love it and they want to do it. So like I said before, if you want to do this with me and learn this here, come to my workshop here in Spain and I'll show you this process as well as how to build the rest of the guitar. This is just one element. But also I have a course online where I also show how to do this as well as the whole process of the construction of the guitar. You'll find that on my website, which is www.onlineguitarmakingcourse.com. I will leave the website on the description of the video so that you can find it easily. And if you have any questions or something is not so clear, then just drop me a line and let me know, and I will try to answer the best possible. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you find it useful, and until the next one.